Video gaming is something that has been seen for a long time now as something that promotes transgressive acts within contemporary Western culture. As this multi-million dollar industry has expanded to all corners of the globe, it has been able to utilize new technology to create more graphic scenes of violence that are so realistic and so shocking. It is often strange to think how far things have come since the release of Space Invaders all the way back in 1978. It's as if we've witnessed some sort of digital revolution, a concept inspired by the way Karl Marx looked to show how the Industrial Revolution shaped Victorian society. It's clear that digital technology is the new driving force of history, as it has the power to provoke us and shape our views. There's something about these games that makes people inherently horrified. Major titles such as Grand Theft Auto 5 and Call of Duty have been often seen to push the boundaries of what is seen as transgressive acts through their gameplay, and this has created uproar. It was J.C. Hertz who once claimed that as long as we've been consuming narrative entertainment, we thrill to the exploits of bloodstreak warriors who hack limbs off their opponents. However, there's another form of transgression within these video games that has recently come under the spotlight: racial violence. Some video games have been reported to not only glamorize stereotypical violence such as car theft in Grand Theft Auto, but to now be glamorizing racial violence, whereby video game avatars are pitted against each other simply because of the colour of their skin. This new phenomenon can be seen in the recent title Matheus III, released in 2016. While the game itself may not have received the best reviews for its gameplay, many were fascinated and shocked by the game's underlying messages and some of the themes that were within it. I felt that in order to understand the game, I needed to play it for myself. What was surprising when first playing this game was the message that is shown just before you start. Written by the developers Hangar 13, it states we sought to create an authentic and immersive experience that captures the very turbulent time and place, including depictions of racism, and that most importantly, we felt that to not include this very real and shameful part of our past would have been offensive to the millions who faced and still face bigotry, discrimination, prejudice, and racism in all its forms. The developers also felt, though, at the same time, that these themes and issues were necessary to be included in the game. This sets the tone for what is, in my opinion, a game that addresses more than just standard notions of transgressive video gaming. Mafia 3 offers what at times can be seen as the glamorization of racial violence in order to create a more exciting and more popular game. Throughout the game, you are told the story of Lincoln Clay, a Vietnam veteran and member of the Black Mafia based in what appears to be New Orleans, Louisiana. It is the story of Lincoln's trials and ultimate success as he rises up against the white Italian mafia that appears to control the movements of the Black Mafia. The white mafia are also the ones who kill Lincoln's family and friends and destroy his home. The game forces you to experience, at times, distressing language and abuse that Lincoln would face during his life.
Fuck the niggas. Fuck those unwashed, debased, big-lipped, bug-eyed savages who grow fatter and lazier off everything the white man has ever made.
More subtle cinematic moments in the game, such as Lincoln being the only black man to enter the country club where he meets Sal Marcano, the leader of the white mafia, give you an indication that this video game is not just another generic crime game. But why did Hangar 13 choose to go in such a provocative direction? Graham Kirkpatrick noted in his book, Aesthetic Theory in the Video Game, that if we're not interested in the character and what is happening to them, then we won't be interested in playing the game. Is there, however, more to the rise of video games such as Mafia 3 than just an interesting storyline?
Introducing the supercharged PlayStation 4 Pro console system!
Today's global video game market makes it easier than ever for gamers to immerse themselves in multitudes of violent games. Major franchises such as Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto now offer some of the most impressive graphics and visuals that truly capture scenes of a violent nature. In a way, we could see that these games depict violence and racism, offer an outlet to members of society, as if they can enter another world. Jeff King in the book Tomb Raiders and Space Invaders pointed out that qualities such as striking imagery and sound are important sources of pleasure in video games. When you accompany this with the catharsis theory, coined by Seymour Feshbach, he states that acting out in violent video games effectively purges us of the violent thoughts we have, thus taking away the need to act them out in the real world. This also supported somewhat by Sigmund Freud's notions of repression, in that we often suppress certain thoughts and desires, and then these can sometimes burst out in particular ways. So if we really combine these three theories, we can see that gamers are more able in today's game market to purge their violent thoughts and desires more easily with the help of far more advanced visual graphics, something that is evident in titles like Mafia and Grand Theft Auto. Some theorists have suggested also that characters such as Lincoln are shown to use violence and aggression because the popular media often portrays black males as naturally violent, coinciding with notions of the media's ability to dominate the popular view within society, something similar to the ideological state apparatus suggested by Marx. This apparatus means that the bourgeoisie are able to use the means of production to control the media and therefore control our perceptions of black people within the popular media. Research published back in 2014 showed the results of a test in which 267 white university students in Ohio State were asked to play video games such as Saints Row 2, Fight Night, and SmackDown vs. Raw 2010. The students were divided into groups in which some would play as white characters, some as black characters, all of which were set up before the player entered the room to start the game. After playing said games, they were asked a series of questions relating to their views on African Americans. For those who played as a black character, research found that these students were more likely to associate pictures of African Americans to negative words, such as terrible or horrible. They also found that when shown pictures of weapons and everyday objects, and then shown pictures of white and black people, students will more often than not associate the weapons with black people. The findings of this study can also be seen in the game Resident Evil 5, where in the opening mission you play as a white soldier, and in order to complete said mission, you must kill hordes of black zombies. This is seen as hugely problematic, as it was seen to promote black people as inhuman savages, and many found it controversial that it was a white male in military clothing who was shooting and killing said zombies. Some games, however, have more obvious racist themes, such as Call of Juarez The Cartel, in which players can get an achievement for killing 40 or more black people in one of the early levels. And that obviously caused outrage. Clearly, studies done in Ohio and the aftermath of Resident Evil highlight the effect that the media has on our perceptions of racial identity and stereotypes. Indeed, it was Malcolm X that once said the media is the most powerful entity on earth, and that they have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. However, some have argued that we do not simply just conform to notions in the media that all black people are more violent and aggressive. David Kushner has argued that similarly violent games such as Quake and Doom are not murder simulators, they're just paintball without the welts. Many other theorists have also done what they can to argue against these notions of video games promoting racism and other forms of violence. An example of this is research done by Christopher Ferguson, who found evidence that a lot of previous laboratory research failed to give clear-cut evidence to support whether or not video games truly promoted violence of any kind within society. This is due in part to the fact that laboratory work is so different to that of the real world. List and Levitt noted that because test subjects know that they are being watched, they will produce the results that they think you want. So how can we truly find out if these games influence people's views, or if they glamorize a certain view of racial violence or racism as a whole? We can also see that within the video game industry, there are varying ways that themes of racism can be portrayed. In the popular franchise Assassin's Creed, one title sticks out in particular as thought-provoking. The third game in the series gives you two perspectives. That of the main character, who is a Native American, and one of a British settler, who is the father of the main character, known as Connor. While you play through the game, you're often tasked with assassinating several British Templars in order to progress, something which annoyed a lot of fans of the franchise. Many felt that the British within the game were portrayed almost entirely as pure evil. However, the game has also been seen as empowering, as it follows an underdog story. Connor is intent on protecting his people and his culture from complete annihilation. We can also see this in Mafia III, as Lincoln fights to protect his part of New Orleans from control of the white mafia. From what we've seen, it's clear that video games have many different ways of addressing racist themes or showing racial violence. Can we say from this, though, that these games promote racist views? I feel this is something that differs between games and particular developers. For example, the themes in Resident Evil 5 are seen by some as racist, but the developers deny any intention of promoting racist themes. If you're going to base the first mission in Africa, how can you not show the zombies being African? Whereas we could see developers of certain games, such as Ethnic Cleansing, clearly have a message they want to get across. We have to take into account as well the nature of contemporary Western culture. Ma noted back in 1994 that this myth about harmonious, violence-free living has been exposed, as modern transportation and communication have eliminated social barriers, making violence more visible. And this has never been truer today, and perhaps video games are being used as some form of scapegoat in order to deter people from the real issues within our society.